Hi there. Welcome to Tech Talk Weekly. I'm Bob from Creation Station. This is our weekly show where we get you I think I have 5 links today, top cool stories in the news. By the way, Starliner is still up there at the space station and is not coming home. We're going to find out next week, maybe, hopefully. And then we're going to get you on your way in about 20 minutes. If you've got a story you'd like us to cover, besides Starliner, Creation Station at broward.org comes right to me. I've got Miss Emmalynn from North Regional. I almost screwed it up. See, we were just talking about a different branch, and I almost messed it up. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Bob?
Life is really good. Summer's over. It's all relaxed. Tell us, what do you do out there at North Regional?
So primarily I do reference work in the adult services section. I also help manage our periodicals, which is a lot of public magazines, some college magazines, since we are a dual use branch. And that's
Still
the
Dead Tree
majority.
magazines, folks.
I know. Yep. Paper magazines. Come on in, take them out. As long as it's not the current issue, we want everyone to have access to that.
You know, that is something that I bet a lot of people don't know. You can still show up at a Broward County library and check out and take home older versions of magazines and newspapers. Probably not too many newspapers anymore, but at least some magazines out there. And we'd like you to bring them back.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got all the digital ones for you, so you don't have to come to the building. But it's a really cool thing.
Yeah, great for travel.
This is also true. I would be lost without my Kindle, though. Man, I just...
Me as well.
I need that. I need that in my life. Something else we all need in our lives is reliable GPS.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, if you're flying, like I have been over the last 2 months, flying a lot of places around the planet, this was not a fun story. So GPS, they had a little hackathon thing, and they proved, they did a proof of concept, and then it was revealed afterwards that, oh no, they've been doing this for the last year. People have been hacking into commercial aircraft GPS systems and changing things. Like destinations and altitude and time. What do you think?
It's kind of scary, honestly. In the article,
way more than kind of, yeah.
Yeah, it said that it doesn't take high tech for them to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And the result is obviously bad for people on board, but also it takes a really long time to factory reset the plane.
Yeah, it's not something that's you should be doing mid-flight kind of thing. Yeah.
No, and not a quick or easy fix. It can't be done remotely. I'm sure it affects like the airline industry quite a bit.
Yeah. So basically, one of the things that how this works, and we're going to come back to this in our next story, is GPS is really all about time.
Mm-hmm.
So GPS is about the time that it takes for you to move from place to place. So that's one of the reasons why GPS has become so popular and all over the place recently, because of that. So this story is kind of like, oh man, how do we do this? And the reason why time is important, and I want to draw this out here in this one incident that they reported on, a commercial aircraft from a Western country. They did not mention which airline and which country, mostly for security's sake, had their clocks set forward by years, which means you're out of bounds of the encrypted communications, which means you can now start hacking into other things.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so our next story is all about GPS and time, because you may have remembered a story similar to this we did a couple months ago on time on the moon. How do you track time on the moon? They're going to put a satellite network up around the moon very soon. And we are going to be able to do things like radio communications and actually using lasers, but communications around the moon. But then what's the time zone for the moon?
Right.
What do you think the time zone should be?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to standardize that type of thing. And they were talking about even like for purposes of where they need exact nanosecond markings, there were like extra seconds or something in the moon time. So how do you account for that and being, well, scientific when you need to measure things?
Yeah. It's crazy. There's a lot more complications as soon as you get it to trying to do one large planetary system rather than a single planet. As soon as you start messing around and adding more things, it's the same thing they do with the rovers on Mars. But at least the rovers on Mars, it's one country, the United States, that's controlling those rovers for the most part. Some other countries, the UAE, India, have some satellites around Mars. China now has rovers on the moon. We're going to be sending another rover to the moon soon. India's is still floating around there, though I think the batteries died on that one. So we need to be able to control this across multiple countries. The standard response most people give is, well, it should be Houston. So it should be Houston time because Houston's our control center for most of our stuff from the U.S. side. Other countries are not appreciative of that.
I can imagine.
So this article, this is another one, folks. You've got to go read the show notes. You've got to start looking at all of these complicated. I'm not even going to try and explain these.
Yeah, if they can understand, please let me know because I tried.
Leave a note in the comments for us afterwards, or email us, creationstation@broward.org, and you can tell us exactly how this is going to work. They're very, very close. And for yours and my purposes, Emmalynn, we could probably just get by with this because we don't care if it's off by half a second. Space flight, though, that thousandths of a second really matters.
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine what's going to happen if somebody tries to hack that GPS, though.
No, I certainly get sent to the wrong planet.
Yeah, exactly.
Human life.
Miss the moon and just keep on going? Yeah. No. Just no. Okay, so I have an article for you that's going to make you angry. It should make you angry, everybody out there. It's already got us too riled up just looking at the headlines beforehand. So this is a science story, not a political story, but the U.S. Air Force has announced they are going to refuse to complete a cleanup for PFAS chemicals on some of their bases that they've already agreed they were going to do. And now they are not going to do it because of a ruling by the courts on the Chevron doctrine, which is outside of the bounds of our show here, but it's a ruling by the Supreme Court that governs who should be able to enforce rules. And that's my question for you, Emmalynn. Who do you think should be enforcing rules on something like this, where it's going to affect everyone? Tucson has polluted water because of the Air Force. The Air Force was cleaning it up, and now they're going to stop.
Well, I think the EPA, they have the experts on environmental matters. So if they're saying, this poses a significant risk, and I think what the article said was, there was some debate as to whether it was immediate risk for the people in Tuscan or whether it was like a possible risk. And what they were saying basically is that the infrastructure that they have to filter was not designed for PFAS. Right. And basically, if it's continued to operate in that way, it could cause a huge outage of available clean drinking water for the people in Tuscan.
Tucson,
so Tucson. And I do think that that is a significant risk, and the Environmental Protection Agency should be able to regulate that with another governmental agency when they're clearly the ones at.
And I think that's one of these unintended consequences of court rulings sometimes is The government should be able to tell the government what to do. If it's going to be a ruling on private industry, I can see a point of, okay, well, we need to go back to Congress. We need to go get some rules and regulations in here. I don't think it should happen this way, that one government agency can tell another government agency, no, we're not going to do what we've already agreed to do.
Yeah.
And like you said, if you don't know out there, PFAS are those forever chemicals, as they talk about. They never disappear. We're talking a 10 square mile area around Tucson International Airport. That is a super fun site that the U.S. Air Force has already agreed to clean up. And this is I've said it 3 times. This is my big hangup. They agreed to this. They had a right to go through and put in the other conditions and stuff. And now they're trying to back out of something that we're already giving them money to do as part of the budget.
Yeah, I think it's like 0.1% of the Air Force budget. I mean, they really couldn't give that amount.
I know. It's $25 million, which to you and me is a lot of money. To the Air Force, that's nothing.
Yeah.
Why can't we just, and this is why it's a science story for us to cover, because these are the things that we have to take into account as we're trying to clean up the planet, as we're trying to fix the problems that in this case, it was totally unwitting. At least at first, they didn't understand what they were doing. And once they did, it got shut down and, mitigation and all those other things. But we got to figure out a way of doing this, of fixing this.
Yeah. If for nothing else,
I would like to drink some clean water.
Yeah. Yeah.
And remember last week, we covered the idea of they know how to get some of these chemicals out of your water at home now by boiling your kettle. If you didn't pay attention to that story, go back and listen to last week. It's not a full solve, but it's an individual solve for your house, maybe, kind of. So, terrified of water. How about AI? How terrified are you about AI?
Well,
do you do any kind of artwork and stuff like that with AI yet?
Not particularly. The most that I've done with AI has been kind of dabbling with the travel planning abilities of AI to bring together, like, oh, what are some highlights of a country I'd like to visit, or something along those lines. Something.
And see again our travel advisory episode from Creation Station Monthly last month.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be sure to check that out. So I haven't really done too much with the imaging, but I could see where artists, would be significantly concerned with, can this be, replicated or even better than something a human could create? And it is kind of scary, but I like the article's point of how, humans are continually changing. And, a robot isn't necessarily, depending on I believe their machine algorithm, from my basic understanding of AI, we haven't quite gotten to the point where they're acting as humans like that.
Yeah, that's a long
thinking.
That is much farther off than most of the hype stuff deals with.
Yeah.
That's something that's not happening anytime real soon.
Right.
Generative AI is here and is being used. General AI is not. But I do think that part of it is figuring out how you're going to use AI as a tool and what you're going to do with that tool. This one example in here from Rachel McLean. She has a thing about, it's called Duck, and it takes in some people from the 1960s, Marilyn Monroe, Sean Connery's James Bond, JFK, etc. And she used AI and deepfake stuff to transform her face into these other characters as part of the play, and then build on that. So it's something that could not be done by a human artist without the AI. And AI can't do it on its own because it can't come up with that concept, and it can't develop and do and build all the rest of the stuff either. So it's very much here's this new tool that we're going to use to do things.
Yeah.
We've talked about it on the show before, Photoshop. Everybody just accepts the fact when you look at a photo now, someone used Photoshop to clean up something, or you remove that person in the background you didn't want there.
The magic eraser.
Yeah, that's just a form of AI manipulation. And it's just you're in control of it a little bit more, hands on the reins, than just turning it loose and letting the AI algorithm do it.
I kind of liked, I think it was her that said it was a collaborator.
Yeah.
So, as you said, the idea has to be kind of at least partially human generated, really. I mean, if you think even just basic prompt wise has to be guided somewhere. So that's what, it's very interesting. I took a class on AI and like art and rights and, how they take kind of existing art and then, build off of it, like copyright issues. It gets very intense and you question like whose art really is it? And, who has rights to that at that point? Like
there was a court ruling that came down about 2 hours ago as of filming. We're not going to talk about it. We probably won't even talk about it next week because it's just a ruling. It's not like the case is settled. It was just a ruling to allow the case to continue. So there's a lot more to come on this. But one way of fixing AI tools like this, at least in my opinion, one good way of using this, just like you were saying, is harnessing them as tools instead. Indonesia, by the way, rest of world, if you have not heard me talk about it before, go read this site, learn something about tech outside of the Western culture. Indonesia has decided they need AI, just like most places around the world did. But instead of going out and getting someone like OpenAI or Google or someone, they built it themselves. So the government could be in control and decide we want to build something that is useful for our people rather than just we want to make goofy images or we want to imitate other people. So it took the tools and then built some AI tools on top of those for their population. The first one that really rolled out that's done really good, and I love this story about it, is all about fishing. And I know you're like, wait, AI and fishing, how does that even go together?
Yeah.
But it's using the AI to examine all sorts of data about where fishermen are getting their catches, how much they're catching in an area, and then using that to direct local fishermen who couldn't afford all the fancy possibility gear for that and say, here, this is where you should go fish today because that's where it's going to be good for you today. And don't fish in this other area because it's been overfished and we need to keep that clear and build up stocks. And also catching people who are taking more than they're supposed to take.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool, actually.
Yeah.
How it figures out where the fish are, depending on the temperature and like the chlorophyll. I had no idea but it's great for the fishermen because, I think at the end they were like, we might not always catch a lot, but we know we're going to catch something.
Yeah.
And that, that's got to be a morale booster as well as,
Yeah, and I think that part of it is that this is something that the government has subsidized a little bit because there's a lot of poor fishermen out there, obviously. If you know anyone who does commercial fishing, nobody makes it a ton of money on this. No one's rich. But they give them the GPS devices that connect into the network to be able to handle this. And that's one of the ways they can track where everybody's been and what they're doing.
Yeah.
You may not like that as a privacy thing, but if you're a commercial business and you want to try and make more money, you're probably going to be able to take some of this on.
Yeah, there has to be some way to safeguard all that data that they're collecting.
Yeah.
They did talk about toward the end of the article.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really cool. And it's one of those AI stories that is like, this is what we wanted AI to do. We didn't want AI to take the artists' jobs. We wanted it to do these things. Here you go. Here's what AI can do for you. Let's embrace the people who are actually doing it and using it. Wasn't that cool?
Yes.
It is. It's fun. So you've got something cool going on out there just this weekend out there at North Regional, don't you?
I do. On Saturday, we have a program all about fraud. So how to protect yourself from it, it's going to be presented by ARP from 12:30 to 2 o'clock in our upstairs programming room. So please come join us because everyone needs to know about this,
Yeah.
any age, really. It's always good to be up to date on, the things that you can do to mitigate all these bad attempts at trying to steal your data and things that.
It is not online. So those of you who are outside of South Florida, sorry, you cannot attend this one. But you'd really want to be here because as much as I'm kind of interested in that fraud one, I'm like, fraud gets over at 2 o'clock and then Wags and Tails picks right up at 2 o'clock downstairs. And I can go sit with the dogs and read books. And I'm kind of liking this idea of a Saturday in the rain over there at North Regional this weekend.
Yes. Who could not want to spend time with the therapy dogs?
Yeah.
No.
It's a pretty awesome thing that libraries do, folks. Come and hang out with us. Thank you, Miss Emmalynn, for being here today.
I had a good time.
Great. If there's a library or librarian you want to see featured on the show, reach out. CreationStation@broward.org. And we'll see everybody next week. Have a great time.